Welcome. I'm Marlene Halliday. This is Independent Live Media, and it's the latest in our series, There Is No Planet B. We're live streaming. If you're watching the live stream and you've got any comments, we'll try and respond to those. And just a wee heads up, my house has a team of joiners working outside today. If you hear a bang in the background, it's the joiners. So,
I can't hear
COP26.
you. The audio's gone after after the video went, then the audio went as well, so I can't hear you, I'm afraid.
Uh, I can hear. You can't hear me?
Tell you what, I'll try logging back in. See you in a second.
Okay, okay. So, little glitch there. That was our guest, Ruth Watson, and as you perhaps heard, she's going to log out and log back in again. Anyway, we'll just keep the live stream going. It's it happens. So, put her back in. I'll add to this room. You're back.
Hello! I can hear
Hooray!
you.
Hooray! That's fantastic.
The joys of technology.
The
I could
joys
hear
of
that.
technology.
I could hear your intro music fine, and then when you clicked to start talking to me, I'm like, I can't hear a thing. Sorry.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen again. But it's really great to have you here, Ruth. Thanks for coming in the program, and Ruth's here to talk as a member of Yes Kirriemuir. So COP26 has ended, and we have the Glasgow Climate Pact. Presidents and prime ministers have come and gone, and pledges have been made. Some countries have allied themselves to those pledges and to each other. Others have kept their distance. And currently, of course, I'm sure climate scientists will be poring over the details of those pledges and plans,
Or the
asking the
lack
big
of details.
or the lack of detail, yeah, and asking that question, are they enough to keep global warming down to 1.5 and 1.5 degrees? The answer to that is no. Currently, we're on track for about 2.4 degrees, which would be a very uncomfortable place for humanity and many other species to be living in. However, it has to be said that's a significant reduction from where we were a few years ago. So, as I said, Ruth's here. She's a very active member of Yes Kirriemuir, and while the eyes of the world were on Glasgow and COP26, Kirriemuir was having its own COP.
Yeah.
COP Kirrie-
Well, we decided that we all of the members of Yes Kerry that were taking part in the discussions about it feel really passionately and strongly, not only about the climate emergency, but about a socially just transition, one that takes into account the so-called global south as well as the impact on people in Scotland. So, you know, Glasgow seems to be a bit far away when you're living in the middle of the Glens, It's kind of, Glasgow, it's kind of, I mean, you could be talking about New York or Hamburg, you know what I mean? So we thought, well, we wanted to have an action which raised the issues about how we believe that Scotland, an independent Scotland, is essential for a sustainable Scotland and to protect our environmental standards and many of the issues that underpin climate change. And in order for Scotland to be able to really play its part, we believe it's essential that we have Scottish independence. And we wanted to go out and talk to people about that, spread a positive message about what Scotland could be and could achieve. But we didn't want to be seen as just being opportunistic because we actually really care about it. We're not going to be one of these sort of prospective parliamentary candidates that picks up a bin bag and goes for 10 minutes for a litter peck and then disappears off, sort of job done. So we thought, well, how do you show commitment? You turn up and you do the work. So we thought, well, we'll have our own Kirrie COP. And so for the 12 days of COP26, we had a stall in the middle of the Kirrie Town Square, and it was brilliant. It was fun. I mean, it was absolutely, the weather was appalling sometimes, and it was a wee bit cold at other times. And there was a moment or two where the snow started coming down, and I was feeling a bit sorry for myself. But it was so worth it. We had so many conversations. I mean, there was a couple of days we were standing, we were just drook. But there was school kids, like young adults, standing in the pouring rain with an increasingly soggy sandwich out the copy, talking to us about the
Yeah.
issues and wanting answers and engaging with us. And a lot of people coming over to show support, a lot of people with questions. Um, Surprisingly, actually, for the rural location that we're in, not that many people. There were a few people kind of going bottom shaking their head, and but there was a lot of people who I know for a fact, because Kerry's a wee place,
Yeah.
are previous or have perhaps voted in a way completely counter to every one of my values. But they were coming over and talking to us
Mm.
because they cared about it. And it gave us an opportunity to have informed, positive conversation. There was one old boy who came over the first day. He's like, "Oh, I'm British, I'm Scottish, but I'm British, and I like my blue passport." Um, and we kind of we got
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about the things that he liked about it, and I pointed out that actually, as part of the EU, we had the right on any country to pop into any of the European embassies if we needed assistance, and I was gone, and we had. But then somebody came over, a supporter came over, and we were talking about environmental standards, and it was sort of the vernacular began to be used about because we were among friends, and I said the thing that I could never get over was how support in England in particular, my concern about environmental standards is very widespread. But one of the things that actually was very powerful when talking to people was the issue of raw sewage being pumped into the
Yeah.
English waters.
Yeah. Indeed.
And I said the thing that I couldn't get over, I said it's one thing for people to swallow Johnson's lies, but I can't get over the way that they're now prepared to drink his shite, if you'll pardon my French. And that old boy he was still standing at the stall, and he just about choked on his
Oh,
buttery.
goodness.
Um, aye, but 2 days later we were standing again, and he came over. It was a biting cold weather, and he came over a wee bag of chocolates for us,
Yeah.
and said, "I still don't agree with you, but I admire your persistence, and I agree with some of what you say." And that's why it's important to be out
Yeah.
there, and the materials that we had, the Believe in Scotland, pardon me, we took some banners, there was some Believe in Scotland material, our chairman Gordon Ewan, and his son worked on sort of rejigged to get the right dimensions for banners for the stall. So the stall looked amazing. They're like the pictures of renewables, pictures of wind farms, factual information, and that was one of the things that I think is really important. Our
Mm.
stall, we didn't look like sort of homespun BAM pots. We looked mainstream. The stall looked professional. The materials we were handing out were professional, sourced material. And I think there was actually two or three people who came up that we ended up with a couple of people who definitely didn't agree with our perspective that became quite agitated. And I think that one of the things that they were concerned about was that we looked like we were on the
Yeah.
winning side.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those I kept seeing. In fact, what enabled me to clock on to what was going on up in Kerry was I kept seeing photographs on social media of the bunch of you up there, and what caught my eye were the banners that you had. I mean, I recognised them. I mean, I knew there were at least a few of them were from Believe in Scotland, and they're producing such good material. I mean, it's just so helpful. And you're right, it looked professional. It didn't look like a wee gang of folk who are just out there kind of trying to slip you a leaflet. So, I mean, it's one of the things, isn't it? How to start, how to open up a conversation with someone who just disagree. I mean, if it's about Scotland being independent, they disagree, but how to open up a conversation with them. And it sounds like you had a good go at, and successfully at doing that.
Well, I'm a bit of a machine. So so many years ago, I lived at Faslane Peace Camp, and I had
Uh,
occasional forays down to Greenham. So I'm kind of used. I mean, I lived there for a couple of years, so I'm kind of used to. I've kind of honed my patter, and also I'm a journalist, and I kind of so I've done work with PR as well, and so one of the things that I really enjoy, I enjoy communicating with people, but I think one of the things is that you get somebody on a stall with you. Yeah, if you've got lots of people there, that's fantastic. But I think there's a lot to be said about getting people who perhaps aren't experienced with being on stalls, or who don't really know, they're not really confident, getting them on with somebody like me. You know, it's like sort of like an old tup over a young yow, or a young tup and an old yow. You know what I mean? It's just that kind of, to go
Yes.
back to a farming
Careful, just
analogy.
careful there.
Yeah, there was none of that. I'm just saying, in terms of sharing it, you know, sort of training people up. So we did get 2 or 3 people who, it was the first time on a stall, and they weren't very sure. And I said, look, just sort of, you know, have a listen and see how it goes, and then try and adapt it for what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really enjoy is when you approach somebody, you've literally got 6 seconds to try and get their attention and get them hooked. And so I quite like throwing out the line and then seeing what hook's going to work particularly with them. So for some people it might be the environmental standards. For some people it might be food and drink. For other people it might be renewables or sustainability or the carbon footprint. But there's very few people who don't care about any of those. Now, we definitely got some people, because we had right across the front, independence is normal. We never hide who we are.
Yeah.
But I would say, hello, we're having our own Kirrie COP. Have you heard of COP26 happening in Glasgow? We care about environmental standards.
Yeah.
We want to talk to you about a sustainable Scotland. So all the things, but then we always introduced who we were and said that we were doing it for Yes Kirriemuir. So nobody was being duped. You have to be honest with
You
people
do. Yeah, you
and
do. Yeah.
straightforward, and 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 give people an opportunity to disagree with you and be respectful of their concerns. But then sort of try and, when people sort of show you the areas that they're concerned with, it's about kind of going, okay, well, yeah, I agree with you on that, but this is the answer we have, and these are the facts that we have. Don't take my word for it. Go and find out some more. You're welcome to come back to us through social media, and we can
Yeah.
try and answer any more questions you
Yeah.
have. And that's the way you sort of treat the youngsters, the young adults that we spoke to. Um, they were really engaged and they really cared about it. And they really responded well to being asked what they thought and what their concerns were, and for them, and us asking them what they wanted to see and what future they wanted to see. And then we would say, are you registered to vote? If you aren't registered to vote, you do know that when you're 16, you are able to vote. The next elections could be the most important of your lives. Why not be a part of the
Yeah.
conversation? And we weren't telling them what to think. I would never tell anyone, maybe apart from my husband, what to think. But poor man. But you know, I mean, I would never tell anyone what to think. But I will offer them up the information, and I always say to people, don't take my word for it. Here are the sources. Go to
Yeah.
source and find
Yeah.
out for yourself.
Yeah, and indeed, I mean, I think it really makes it. I mean, I mean, that's part of making it a professional, isn't it? That professional kind of layout that you've either got a piece of paper that's got the sources on it, or you can direct people to go
Mhm.
and look for it actually. And I mean, it's interesting what you're saying about, you're there with a lot of experience and your own ways of starting conversations. And I've not done very much in the way of stalls, and my mentor has been Mary McCabe down in Glasgow in Pensioners for Independence. And she's like, she's just done that kind of thing for years, year in, year out. So for her, it's nothing to go and do that in a stall, approach a complete stranger. For me, it's definitely pushing me past my comfort zone. And yeah, I mean, as you say, you kind of learn ways of doing it, and then of course you get rebuffed and you get occasionally a name called, but there you go. It's just par for doing it.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, actually, there was one of my colleagues was saying, but he felt really bad because he was working, and so he couldn't be on the stalls. But the business that he has was where we were keeping the materials close by where the stalls were being held. And I'm going, but look at what you're doing. You're
Yeah,
enabling the stalls. And
yeah,
that's one of the things that we found at the peace camps at Greenham. It was quite rough. You're living outside, and it wasn't always fun. Um, but we would often get people coming along and saying, "Oh, I feel really bad because I can't do what you're doing." And we're going, "Yeah, but we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing if it wasn't for people like you bringing us a hot meal, or being the support."
yeah,
And
yeah,
actually, one of the things that I found, there was a couple of days where I was on my own just because we couldn't get a second person for cover because, just the weather or work
Yeah.
or whatever, the way things
Yeah.
are working out. And I don't like being on a stall on my own. And just because I think it's always better to have a witness, I
Ah.
think that it's
Yeah.
always, I think it's
Yeah.
always better to have corroboration. I think you are less likely to have somebody behaving badly. There was one gentleman who became so agitated that I went back behind the table. And I'm adept at sort of de-escalating. Again, I'm not sure if my husband would agree with me, but you sort of you use certain techniques to try and de-escalate a situation. And eventually he realized that he was losing the plot and he left. So these things are less likely to happen when there's more than one person. So there's a number of reasons why
Yeah.
it's good practice
Yeah.
to have two people on a stall. And actually, if one of those people that's on the stall doesn't feel comfortable approaching people, you know what, just their presence, being there, giving them moral support, being there to help tidy up and set up, being there as a witness and
Yeah.
backup,
Yeah.
you don't, not everybody has the same skills. I mean, I can't, my health's been a bit rubbish this year, so I can't carry all the stuff that I usually would carry. I mean, so having somebody who can kind of come and help set it up for me, that's a big part of enabling it. So I think that we have to understand and recognize that different people have different skills, and that all of those skills have a place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like it sounds like it was just a very, very successful idea that that you thought the group followed through on, and obviously you played a big part in that. I mean,
Well, it was teamwork. I mean, it was
yeah.
teamwork.
Yeah.
I have to say that I can be a bit of a balloon in many ways, but I have all these ideas I can collect. So, I used to work in live programs. I'm full of ideas, and so often it takes a team to see if there's any substance to those ideas that can be carried through.
Ah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, but
We've got someone like that on Independence Live, and we're all going, "Well, yeah, but how would you do it? And who's going to do it?"
exactly.
And yeah,
Exactly. But it the whole of Kirriemuir, the whole of Yes Kirriemuir was a part of it. I mean, it wasn't, it was my idea, but other people enabled it, and it's something that I felt passionately about, and I was lucky I was able to give some time
yeah,
for it.
yeah.
But it was certainly, none of these things happen. None of these things happen in isolation. And none of us is an island, and so I was
Indeed.
mortified. I mean, I was delighted that the National ran a piece about it on the SDIY, but I was mortified at how much of it seemed to be about me, because that's
Mm,
absolutely not the
yeah,
case. It was a team effort, and none of it would have happened without the team.
yeah, yeah. Indeed, indeed. I just noticed on the comments, Ruth, someone has put a wee comment in from the YouTube channel. Hashbury Stumble. Thank you for your comment. Just if you see it there, sort of commenting that the
Yes.
Greenham women and the Faslane Peace Camp are much to be admired, and indeed that's correct. That's correct
Yeah, I mean,
indeed.
Greenham was an inspirational place. I learned a lot and met a lot of amazing women. Faslane is still sadly needed. I mean, Greenham is no longer
Yeah,
was
no
no
longer.
longer needed
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
cruise missiles are away. But Faslane sadly still is very much needed, and I take my hat off to the folk
yeah.
who are still staying there. It is really important. I think that peace camps actually are a really important constant presence and reminder. Um, yeah, it's one of the things that I look forward to about independence. It's getting rid of Trident, getting nuclear weapons off our soil, and it's something I have felt passionately about for far too many
Yeah,
decades. So I look forward to
yeah,
getting a
yeah,
shot of
yeah,
Trident.
yeah, yeah. I mean, just to pick you up on one thing you said, because it rang a bell with me when you were talking about, it is important going out and doing those kind of events. That there's transparency, and it's quite obvious to anyone who's approaching you that you've got a banner there saying independence is normal, or something like that. So that there, and I mean, I was out with during COP, the Glasgow COP. I mean, I was out and a couple of times with people from Yes Glasgow Northwest. I'm going to be talking to a couple of them for another episode in this series, and I was also out with with the Glasgow Pensioners for Independence group, and I found myself at one point I just had this question in my mind of, is this should we be here should we be here in with our kind of independence hats on? I mean, for example, one of them, we're in George Square with Big Blue. Now, Big Blue is a very, very big saltire that Glasgow Northwest were looking after while COP was on, and they were taking it in various places. And I just kind of thought, well, Extinction Rebellion people were there, the greenwashing folk were there. There's all sorts of environmental groups, and I thought, I wonder if we should just have come here as an environmental group. And I came to a view about that. But did you have any kind of similar kind of questions in your mind?
Not when we were doing the stall, because we'd already discussed that as a group. And we all, it honestly, yes, Kirrie, it's a it's a brilliant wee group. It's there's a really good ethical seam that just goes right through the heart of Yes, Kirrie, and it's a group I'm actually really pleased to be a part of,
Mm,
because I trust the judgment of what people are saying, and the collegiality and the thoughtfulness, and we have a breadth of perspectives within the group, and I think that's very useful and very valuable. And we were all absolutely in agreement that yes, Scottish independence is crucial for Scotland, um, being able to address the issues of, for example, environmental standards, and make the most of our renewable sector and be fully sustainable within the context of what Scotland wants. But that it was absolutely crucial that we framed that within the context of the issue being addressed at COP. And
yeah,
so we were very careful about the materials that we shared. And so you'll see the banners that we put up were talking about Scotland's renewable sector. We were talking about renewable energy. We had leaflets talking about Scotland's economy, and the sort of some of the environmental issues. And again, these were all sort of the Belief in Scotland
mm,
box, and some of the
yeah, yeah,
the previous indie box that we'd got from the iMail, and some of their materials.
yeah, yeah,
So we had some of Indie Poster Boys materials which were relevant as well. So we were very careful that the only materials that we were sharing were within the context of the discussion surrounding COP, and we were very careful that the framing that we gave to that was relevant, which actually was really easy, given that the Acorn project, which is affecting the northeast, had just been given the kibosh.
yeah,
So
yeah,
basically the carbon capture had just been given the kibosh.
yeah,
Given that I mean, off our we quite often get delays on the roads because these wind turbines that's like sort of like the size of two tenements tall are
yeah,
driving
yeah.
up the
The
motorway.
driving up, yeah,
Yeah. So there's a real local context for us, and we were very clear that we were keeping that context. People were really interested about hearing about the how the SEE, how Scotland has to pay to put
yeah,
our energy onto the
yeah,
national grid, whereas sort of nuclear power and sort of dirty energy in the south of England is paid for their power. So things like that. It was very easy. We didn't have to look far to find facts to back up the assertion that we had, that Scottish independence was essential for ensuring
yeah,
Scotland played its part as fully as it could for a
yeah.
sustainable future.
Yes, yes, indeed. That sounds. I mean, when I was talking to people, chatting to people who are in the Glasgow Pensioners for Indie, so quite a lot of not at all, but quite a lot of the time, we're kind of trying to think how to communicate with from us as pensioners age group, our age group, still not convinced about independence, but also trying to communicate to a younger kind of age group. And at least if you can say to someone, well, think about it from your grandkids' point of view, or even your children's point of view, for what the future might be. And in that way, thinking about a climate change, climate emergency, is also an easy way to make that connection. So we put a wee leaflet together. So on the one side of it, it's got some statistics that have been put together by academics in the States. The graphic was from an organization called Statista, and it was put in terms of the generation being born from now, last sort of 10 years or so, compared to people who were born 50 years before that, and they put together how much worse. 3 times as many droughts, however many times as many, rainstorms, sea level rise. So it's a rather stark, it's a simple bit of graphic, but it's pretty stark about what their life was going to have to cope with, what their generation's going to have to cope with, as compared to, well, certainly mine. And so that's on one side of the leaflet. On the other side of the leaflet, we just had, if Scotland has expertise, we've got a highly qualified population, we've got an immense amount of natural resources, we've got know-how, we've got if we were at the table, if we were at the negotiating table, especially at COP, say, actually we could have a big positive input on that, and we can share that with people around the world. So it was quite a simple wee leaflet, and
Yeah.
it it seemed to make an impact.
I think there's two things there. One of which is the human psyche is very interesting. So if you were to say to somebody that if they were to walk outside the door and there was a man-eating tiger or a person-eating tiger at their gate, that they should do something about that, they would do something about that. If
Aye.
you told them that if they went out for a walk there were sort of tigers on the hills further away, they would go, "Ah, they'll be fine."
Fine.
And I think
Yeah.
that one of the problems that we have when we are delivering this message, and I was very shocked to see that the climate emergency was anticipated back in 1923, but they'd still decided to burn the
Yeah.
world down around them for the sake of money. Um, I think that we have to be careful not to leave people wondering what the answer is. So one of the things that we're very careful to do when we are talking about the atrocious situation that our country and our world is being forced into by people, who make decisions, or for the money men perhaps. One of the things that we're very careful to do is to try and give people a positive action they can take, because you
Mhm.
don't want people to be left sort of so paralyzed by concern and anxiety that they don't know what to do, so
Yeah.
they do nothing.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we try and do is to give people something simple that they can do, a simple action or a simple choice, or sort of try and give somebody an example of a change that they can make that then is positive. But to go to your second point about Scotland's place on the world stage, I think that was one of the successes for Scotland of COP26, was the way the First Minister absolutely. I mean, if you wanted to have, a sort of a master's in how to play diplomacy on the world stage, just look at the way the First Minister played it. I was looking at, I can't remember his name, is it Olaf Sir Ragnarsson, I think it is, the former president of Iceland.
Of
He's never
Iceland.
been off Twitter. He's never been off Twitter the last 3 days talking about how awesome Scotland is. You've got there's the spokesperson for the most vulnerable nations, saying, the real leader of COP26 has been Nicola Sturgeon in
Yeah.
Scotland. You've got people from was it Samoa or Fiji? I can't remember, one of the South Pacific Islanders, talking about Scotland and Scottish independence. And I think the fact that you've got Nancy Pelosi and Ocasio, I can't remember her name now, AOC.
Cortez, yes, AOC,
Yes, yeah,
Alexandra, yeah,
AOC, yes. You've got her, you've got Biden. None of these photographic opportunities were accidents. These are all sending messages. I mean, in diplomatic, I
yeah,
know that I can't remember the name of the rather silly Tory MP who spent hours doing a really nice photo montage, which was brilliant because actually it really showed the power of soft diplomacy. But actually, it was very interesting to see some of the naysayers on social media, some who say they're on our side, going, "Oh, this is a bit cringy," and all she's doing is getting selfies. A lot of them weren't selfies, but B, actually, this is the message that is being sent to the world: is that
yeah,
Scotland is a global player. And one of the things that really interested me, because I am a nerd, was looking at who was giving Scotland the output, what channels were talking about Scotland. And CNN, you've got CNN
Yeah. Yeah.
International, you've
Yeah.
got one of my heroes, Christina Amanpour, you've
Amanpour,
got
yeah.
CNN,
Yeah.
you've got CNN in Bosnia Herzegovina, and there's several different CNN stations doing a lot about Scotland. And to me, again, that says a lot. I think once you get the international media, once the international press has got a running narrative of what Scotland can be and could be and should be, then that's going to go a very, very long way towards, put it this way, in 2014, there were a lot of people who seemed to be saying, oh, but could Scotland manage it? Roll on for post COP26. I don't think there's, I think you'd
Yeah.
be very hard pressed to find any international media outlet or any international leader, really, other than perhaps Bolsonaro, because he's a bampot, um, saying that Scotland has not got a place on the world stage, because I think that Scotland has proved itself.
Indeed, and I mean, it's quite a contrast. I mean, what actually happened was quite a contrast with what was being flagged up as wanting to happen. Probably over the last year from Westminster, and various statements like, "Oh, I don't mind a few saltires being seen, but it's a Union Jack and it's a Union government that's been there." And as you say, I mean, that was a masterclass in how to present yourself on that stage. And what struck me, I mean, particularly like you mentioned, CNN interview, Amanpour. I watched that interview and I just thought, oh, if only we had, if only we had the kind of equivalent in our media here. And you know, she asked the first minister a series of questions. I mean, they weren't. She wasn't trying to trick her. They were just serious questions that needed a
They were
fairly
probing.
involved yeah, they needed a fairly involved, answer, so she asked them, and then she gave the First Minister the space to go into it and actually answer and, and tease out the kind of things that, were a bit, tricky or a bit unknown in that, and now I'm
But
not for a
that's the way
minute.
the BBC. That's the way the BBC used to be. It's the way that
Yeah,
STV used to be. It's the way that
yeah,
journalism in this country was. I mean, I was working in broadcasting up until the turn of the millennium. Gosh, that makes me feel old. Um, and that's the way that broadcasting used to be. But the media now has been rendered supine, and much of that is down to government interference, in my
yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's certainly a big. I mean, it's quite. My husband sort of noticed. He said, "You kept quiet during that whole interview because he's used to me watching. I'm watching Andrew Marr,
Getting it
and
loudy.
exactly. And I'm thinking, oh, for goodness sake, ask this, or I often think Andrew Marr is trying to make his own points, without really kind of letting the other person kind of have a say. But anyway, it was
Yeah, and sometimes
obviously
I mean,
noticeable.
yeah, I mean, sometimes I think you get with some presenters, they get to a certain point in their career where they kind of forget that it's not about them.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So has Yes Kirriemuir got any plans going forward? A Any
Well, I'm
more?
sure that any of my colleagues watching this will be holding their mouth, holding their breath in anticipation of, oh no, what's she going to land us in? But the next thing that we've got on is delivering the newspapers, the
Ah,
million
yeah,
newspapers that are
yeah,
being sent round.
yeah,
And I think this is with my National Yes Network hat on at the moment. I was seeing, I'm one of the admins on the National Yes Network social media, and I noticed today that Inverness was looking for help to get, because they've got a big area to get the
yeah,
leaflets out.
yeah, yeah,
So if anybody's up in Inverness, get in touch with Inverness, and because they're looking for folk. But actually, you know what? If there's people here who aren't involved with a local Yes group, and they'd like to find their local Yes group, you can go to there's an interactive map on the National Yes Network website, which you can find your local Yes group. Um, but if you're not involved and you're thinking maybe you want to be involved, this is a really good time to get in touch with your local Yes group. There's lots of ways to find out who they are, where they are. Social media is a great way to do it, or go to the National Yes Network and drop us a line, and one of my colleagues can send you the details, because there's a million newspapers, a million quality newspapers being printed out now as we speak by the national newspaper. It's a collaboration between Yes.Scot, the SNP Believe in Scotland, and the National. And this is going to be an incredible resource, the first time ever that all of this is going to be handed out, free newspapers through a million doors in Scotland. But it's all being done by volunteers. So so if you want to get involved, get involved. Most local Yes groups will bite your hand off if you say you want to come and help. So it's
that's true. That's
please.
certainly true of the two I'm involved in. We'll be welcoming
For sure.
welcoming new people and
New
and for
people and
that
young legs.
oh yeah, that always helps, especially with tenements. So no, I got it's a tenement. Anyway,
my glutes will be grateful for it, but
yeah,
my
that's right.
soul will
Keeps you
not.
kind of keeps you fit, and I mean for people who live in apart around but where maybe there's not a local Yes group, it's if you get hold of these what the National's producing, that's maybe a good place to start off actually, and maybe get a few friends and acquaintances together and get a new group going.
Yeah. And actually, that's something that I know. I know that some of my colleagues in the national. So the National Yes Network is basically a sort of joyous a joyous form of anarchy, really. It's an autonomous group of Yes groups from across Scotland.
Uh-huh.
There's no
Yeah,
leaders,
yeah.
there's no subscriptions. It's just Yes working together to help each other. But I do know that there have been a couple of people in a couple of areas have been in touch to sort of say, how do we start a new Yes group? So I know that a couple of my colleagues are on that kind of. So if anybody thinks, oh, there's not a Yes group near me, or there was one, but it kind of is a bit inactive, Broughty Ferry, I'm looking at you, then, then get in touch either with your local, get in touch with your neighbours. One of the brilliant things about the National Yes Network is that it's like sort of thinking locally and acting nationally, and thinking nationally but acting locally. So for example, Yes Kirrie, we work. So there's 6 Yes groups in our area in Yes Angus. So we're all autonomous. So nobody's the boss of us, and nor would they dare to be.
No, I was
But
just going to say who would dare really?
but we all so we've got a group chat and we work together, and if one group needs help to get stuff delivered, then
Yeah,
activists from other groups will go and help. So and the National Yes Network is actually just like a sort of a big version of that, and it's been really amazing. So for example, down like Yes Dumfries and Galloway, they've probably got more in common with Yes Orkney or Yes Argyll than Yes Glasgow, which might be
yeah,
their nearest big
yeah,
one. So they can
yeah,
get connected and kind of have ideas and go, okay, well, these are the issues that. So I think it's a really powerful tool that the Yes movement has, and because there's no leader, because there's no money involved, there's none of that, then actually nobody's in it for anything other than the
yeah,
good of independence.
yeah,
So I'm always kind of using the hashtag positively for Scotland and positively for independence, and to me that sums it up. So if there are people out there who are looking to get a Yes group going or activated, or looking for materials or looking for ideas, then we're happy to connect you to your local groups if you don't know how, or perhaps help you get some resources or put you in touch with the folk that can help you. And I'm always happy to chat.
Yeah, that's great. That's so. It's really good having you here, and I've really enjoyed chatting to you, Ruth. And also thanks to the people who've been leaving comments. That while we were talking, I noticed that Hanbury's been giving us the updates on the First Minister's latest. She was doing a latest COVID announcement today. It looks like there was no significant increase in COVID due to COP26. So that's something good that's come out of that. Anyway, thank you again. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for
And
having me.
yeah, it's been great. And yeah, we hope we'll have you back for maybe a different series and a different topic. But thank you again.
Thank you for your time.
Fine. So we've got another few, although COP26 has finished, we've got another few episodes still to come out, and under There Is No Planet B series. I'm going to be talking to a couple of people from Yes Glasgow Northwest later on this week, and that'll be out in a few days' time. We're going to be talking to an author who's written a book from a Buddhist perspective on climate change and how it affects us as human beings, how it affects us emotionally, how best ways to perhaps to deal with that. And I'm hoping to have an interview set up with a few Australian climate activists. Haven't quite got that one in the bag yet, but I'm going to carry on trying to do it. So once again, thanks to Ruth for being here, and thanks to those of you who've been listening.